your friendly neighborhood hostess, Shannon Cutts. I'm an animal sensitive and an intuitive. I'm the founder of animallovelanguages.com, a Reiki master practitioner for pets and their people, and an animal communication teacher. Animal communication itself, in my experience, is the best self development program, the biggest adventure, the most amazingly transformative experience I have ever found to date in my 5 decades of life. And even though I came to animal communication relatively late in life, I feel like that has given me even more appreciation for all of the different ways that learning how to speak, learning how to communicate with all beings, with all different life forms, with all different species has added to my life. I no longer feel so alone or isolated in this world. I no longer struggle when I don't establish that instantaneous deep connection with certain members of my own species. I no longer feel like I'm doing this life thing all on my own. And that is what I want for you too. So I want to start us right at the beginning, all the way back to the beginning, even if you are aware of what animal communication is, even if you've experienced animal communication with your own pets, maybe you're a student with a teacher, maybe you are one of my students and you've taken one of my courses. Even if you do have prior experience, it's always good to approach a brand new adventure, open our minds, invite ourselves to return to learning mode. One of my mentors says there are 3 ways to listen. The first way is to say, "Oh, I hear what they're talking about, and I already know that." And we kind of tend to shut off at that point, right? We don't listen further. The second way to listen is to say, "Oh, I agree with that," or "I don't agree with that." And here again, we shut off and we stop listening. We go up into our own mind and we start thinking about why we agree or why we don't agree or whatever it is that's going on or what we're having for supper that night. The third way to listen is to listen with an open, empty, humble mind. To listen and say, even if I think I already know this, even if I think I agree with this, even if I think I don't agree with this, I'm still going to invite myself to simply listen. Maybe I'll even learn something new. I know that as a professional animal intuitive, I learn something new every single day. Every time I have a conversation with an animal, I learn something new. I learned plenty of new things from my own companion animals. I'm an interspecies mama. I currently share my interspecies family life, my days, my nights with my cockatiel parrot Petal, with my red-footed tortoise Malty, with my box turtle Io, and with our family's standard dachshund Flash Gordon. And recently, I had the incredible good fortune, the privilege of fostering a beautiful young lady kitten whom I named Sasha after she told me that was exactly what she wanted to be called. Even though she has now moved into her forever home, I still feel like she is forever a part of my family. And the truth is, and I always love pondering and reflecting on this quote from Ram Dass. He says, "We're really all just walking each other home." And I think so, in a way, we're all family. In a way, that is really the most profound gift that animal communication has given me, the awareness that there are no strangers here. We are all family. We are all more alike than different on the inside, which of course is where it matters most. We are all just walking one another home. And even if we look at it from a psychological perspective, from Maslow's hierarchy of needs, so many moons ago when I was going through my intro to psychology courses in college, and I still didn't know who I wanted to be when I grew up. And I encountered Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and it just transfixed me. This idea that there's a framework for self evolution. And at the very bottom, at the very foundational level, there is a consistency of basic needs: security, safety, shelter, food, water, rest, just the very basics. And If you think right now, as you're listening to me, challenge your mind to think of a single being alive in a body on this planet right now who does not need these things. If you think of one, reach out to me and let me know because I've been working on this for years and I still have not come up with a single embodied being who does not need these basic things. Is that we have co hosts, and sometimes the co hosts get curious about the ring lights and the gadgets and all the wonderful cords. Yeah, that mommy is using. So if you hear some little unexplained sound effects, just know that those are spontaneously provided by Miss Petal, who's definitely my better as well as prettier half. So let's get started here and let's talk about what is animal communication. There are so many definitions. There are so many different communicators that are offering this service and doing their work in the world. And if you ask me what I think animal communication is, and you ask a different communicator what do they think animal communication is, you've asked somebody on the streets who doesn't even know that intuitive pathways exist. What is animal communication? If you ask a scientist who studies animal behavior or wild species dynamics, we might all come up with a different answer. So, as a part of this exploration, I encourage you to come up with your own. To ask yourself, what is animal communication? What does that phrase mean to me? To me, it means the inner connection. The reason that I called my company, my practice, my work in this world, animal love languages, is to me, communication begins and ends and hopefully continues with listening. To me, communicating is all about listening. And to illustrate this, I would love to share a little story with you. Back in the day, before the internet, before we had Google, before we had the ability to just learn just mountains of information in the average day, we had person to person mentorship. We had one teacher with a handful of students, and that teacher was charged with shepherding those students and passing on his or her knowledge and helping those students grow in a very hands on way. And one of my intuitive teachers was sharing one day the story of the great painter and artist Leonardo da Vinci. And she said there were so many students who would come and they would want to be mentored by him. They would want to work with him. They would want to learn from him. And he had a rather unorthodox teaching style. One of the things that he used to love to do with his students is he would say, I just want you to go and sit in this field or on that bench or in this little tea shop or in the town square or out on the farm all day. And the students would say, why? What do you want me to do? And the great master would say, I want you to notice. I want you to just notice. I want you to listen. I want you to wonder. I want you to get curious. Listening, noticing, wondering. These are the hallmarks of animal communication. These truly should be the hallmarks of all communication. But to me, animal communication begins with this humble beginner's mind, with this empty cup, with this desire to expand and to receive what another being wants to offer. So to me, animal communication is really all about listening and a particular kind of listening, because we all know the kind of listening that most people do. And if we're being honest, we typically often do it too. We get on our smartphones. Maybe we're listening with one ear and we're doing with the other. We're talking to ourselves through the other ear. Maybe we're on our phones. Maybe we're driving. Maybe we're thinking about what we're going to have for breakfast the next day. We're not really paying attention. And The wonderful thing about animal communication is that it only works when we're really paying attention. So that's why I shared in the very beginning that this is really the best self evolution, self transformation, self development program I've ever found because it forces me, it invites me, it welcomes me to show up with all of me right here, right now, to listen. If I'm not listening, I cannot communicate. I can't have a conversation with an animal. They will feel it, they will sense it, and they will not share. And there's all kinds of reasons biological, psychological, emotional, and soul level reasons why animals turn off their side of the conversation when we're not fully present to listen. We're not going to go into that in this particular episode. But it's very important to understand that the only way animal communication is possible is if we're right here, right now, 100% of our attention, our energy, our focus, with our listening ears open and our thinking minds quiet, and we're receiving. This is animal communication. It's amazing how much we miss by trying to multitask. It's amazing how much goes unnoticed and unreceived. This is another reason why I love animal communication so much because it makes our relationships with the other human animals better too. It's just quite marvelous. The animals teach us how to listen, how to show up fully, how to be present, how to come with an open, quiet mind. And then those skills that we learn translate over to other animal conversations that we have with our own species. Often we find that our relationships with family gets better. Our relationships with our partners get better. Our relationships with our parents, with our children, with our bosses, with our employees, with our colleagues, with our neighbors, with total strangers. Our manners get better. We become more respectful drivers. The ripple effect from a single shift of our focus is phenomenal. So for me, animal communication has always started with deep listening. And this is the love piece because the love piece is the great activator. If the listening piece is setting the foundation, the noticing, the getting curious, the showing up with everything in us, putting everything else on hold to be here right now to listen, then the love piece is the activator that allows for the full receiving, the act of receiving that is required for conversation to take place. Because think about someone you really love. Could be an animal, could be a human animal, could be somebody who's passed into spirit. Think about that moment when you first realized you were in love. Maybe it was the first day you met. Maybe it took a little bit more time than that. But when we realize that we are head over heels in love, what very naturally happens next? For most of us, we uncover an incredible desire to learn, to bond, to befriend, to serve, to give, to even merge with that other being, to know everything about them, to be closer to them than any other being alive or in spirit, to be their one and only, and to be the one and only to them. This is deep listening in action. With that love, there's no other better way to transmit I love you than through deep listening. Have you ever had a conversation with someone who did all the talking? And they talked and they talked and they talked and they talked, and you never even said a word. This doesn't have to be a conversation, by the way, that you liked, that you enjoyed being a part of. But have you ever had a conversation with someone who did most or all of the talking And later, you were just stunned or flabbergasted to learn that that person absolutely adored you and wanted to hang out with you more and wanted to talk with you more. Maybe they wanted to go out with you, or maybe they wanted to marry you. Maybe they wanted to do business with you. Maybe they told others that was one of the best conversations I've ever had with anyone ever in my life. And you're thinking to yourself, I didn't even talk. I didn't say anything. That wasn't even a conversation. And they perceived it as being so nourishing and so nurturing and so transforming. And it became this big deal to them, so much so that they would seek out your company. We buy our animals so many things. The pet products industry, and here I'm not just talking about food and shelter and the very basics that we were discussing earlier. I'm talking about toys and parties and costumes and daycare. And all of those things are wonderful expressions of love, especially if our animal really, truly, thoroughly enjoys them. And let's be honest, having companion animals, having pets it can be expensive. So, yes, there is definitely a thriving pet products industry out there. And yes, purchasing things for our animals, toys, treats, soft bedding, even cute costumes if our animal is into that, or at least is a good sport about it. Those are all wonderful, wonderful things that we can do to show our love. But what our animals truly want most, and I've spoken with hundreds upon hundreds of animals, and they all affirm this, what they most want is your attention. They want our attention. They want our present moment focus. They want to feel our awareness of them fully. They want us to listen to them. So many of my students, my animal communication students, when they first start taking my classes, they say, I don't think I'm intuitive, or I'm not very intuitive, or I have an occasional moment where I feel like my intuition is talking to me, but it's not very reliable and I don't really understand why or how it happens. And by the end of just a handful of weeks together, they're having reliable conversations across species boundaries. And it's really all down to one key shift, which is, where are you placing your attention? Are you showing up fully with that love, that bond of love, that desire to learn and to listen, to say, I see you. I hear you. I am present for you right here, right now. There's nothing else. There's no one else more important to me than you right here, right now, sharing who you are with me. We can bring that into every area of our life. Deep listening, noticing, wondering, getting curious, bringing the awareness that we're more alike than different, showing up with our heart open, our mind quiet. I like what one of my mentors says, success leaves clues. So as we wrap up this episode, I want to invite you to contemplate with me any moment in your life where you have ever felt your intuition speaking with you, talking to you, tapping you on your shoulder, trying to get your attention, sending you a sign or a message, maybe when you were awake, maybe in your dreams, maybe in the form of an animal or a bird or an insect that you see in the strangest places at the oddest moments. For me, it's the ladybug. When I see a ladybug, I always know that my spirit guides are trying to get my attention. For me, if I feel My hands spontaneously move to my gut. I know that information is on its way to me. So start just noticing for yourself, how does your intuition even try to get your attention? Maybe it's you hear song lyrics or you get a song stuck in your head. That's always a fun one, right? Maybe you have a recurring dream. Maybe you see a particular license plate message or a bumper sticker. Maybe you just know something and you know it and you don't know how you know it. And now that you know it, you can't unknow it. And nothing that your left brain, logical, analytical 3D mind says can talk you out of knowing what you know. Maybe it's something else entirely. And we are going to dive more deeply into all the different ways that intuition, your intuitive pathways, the different communication channels that you're already wired up with. We're going to dive more deeply into how those work, how you can tap into them, why you should trust them, and what they have to add to your life in upcoming episodes. But for today, I really just want you to focus on just picking out, just cherry picking one or two or a few moments in your life to date when you have really felt your intuition breaking through to you. How did that happen? Do you see any similarities or consistencies from one experience, one intuitive experience to the next? Were those experiences of intuition useful to you? What did they add to your life? Even if you can only come up with one moment when someone knocked at your door or called you on the phone and you just knew who it was before you marched your 3D mind over to your phone screen or over to your front door to look out and confirm what you knew. Maybe you were looking for guidance and you were driving somewhere and a billboard just caught your attention and it had exactly the message that you were looking for. Maybe you were in a crowded room and you just felt somebody staring at you before you turned around to confirm that, yes, in fact, they were staring at you. Maybe you've had a dream that something was going to happen, and later that thing actually happened. We all have these experiences, but most of us don't pay attention to them. So I'm inviting you to start paying attention. Maybe it was something to do with your animal. We'll talk a lot more about this, right? It's my favorite subject and it's what exploring animal communication is all about. But maybe you just knew something about your pet. You just knew that they wanted a companion. You just knew that their tummy was feeling off. You just knew that it was their time to pass. You just knew that this was the animal that you must add to your family. You just knew. So ponder this. To be continued, right? And if you would like to reach out, you've got my information here. I'd love to hear about your intuitive experiences. How do you know when your intuition is talking with you? How do you know when there is a communication coming in? And after you've identified one or a few of these breakthrough moments of deep listening, of receiving information, of receiving a communication that's coming to you, coming through you, then part two, ask yourself how your life might transform if you started stringing those moments together with more consistency. Imagine if you have one breakthrough intuitive moment a week and you identify that that added something of value to your life, then start to imagine, what if it happened once a day? If you have it once a day, imagine what might happen if you had it several times a day. If you have it several times a day, imagine what might happen if you were receiving intuitive messages, intuitive guidance, if you are completely in tune with and in flow with all the other beings that we share the spirit dimension with, if you are constantly in flow, receiving only exactly what you needed to receive right now, being guided effortlessly through the river of life, how might your life transform? That is where we start with animal communication. Not so we can add a new skill to our pet parenting toolkit, although that is wonderful and very useful. Not just we can add some other credit to our resume, not even for the sake of just learning something new, but because of the end result, the thing we want most, more joy, more connection, and the more we are offering ourselves so that others feel seen and heard and received fully. We also open ourselves up with more courage to being seen, being heard, being received fully. So that is my message and my invitation for you this week here on Exploring Animal Communication. My name is Shannon Cutts. I'm an animal sensitive and intuitive, a Reiki master practitioner for pets and their people, and an animal communication teacher. I am sending you all my love. Okay, bye for now.